Hello, it's Bobby from Dig Coding here, and this is the 10th video in the Building and Launching a Real Django website series. The link to the last video is just up here, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and like these videos because it's a massive help. If you have been following along, then you'll know that what we're doing is building a website from scratch and going through every single necessary step to get a website from a development server all the way up to a production server and launched online for the world to see. So where we've got to so far is we've got everything on a development in our project on our local machine. So it's running on a development server so far, and we're nearly there. We're ready to get it onto a, we're going to use a DigitalOcean droplet. So we're going to get on a DigitalOcean droplet soon enough. But before we do, what I wanted to do in this video is upgrade the database that we're using, because what comes straight out of the box is something called SQLite. So that's the database that Django has when you start a new project. That's not really going to be sufficient for this project. I've got these plans for it to be this fantastic website that's doing all these fancy things, and we want something a little bit more heavyweight for the back end, so a better database, and for that we're going to use Postgresql. Now, I have done a video about how to install this onto your local machine, so if you haven't seen it, go have a look, get it all installed so that you're ready to go. Now, also in the description of this video, you will see that there's some links to Django docs that will give you a deep dive on databases and also multiple databases, because what's better than one database? Well, it's multiple databases, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to have two databases in this project, one to handle user authentication and one to handle everything else, so sort of a main database if you like, and that's what we're going to configure today. So let's jump straight into the project again. So I've got some browsers open here. So this is the documentation for PsychoPG, which is the library that we use to handle Postgres in Django. I've also got Django docs open on databases for a bit of bedtime reading. I've got another one here for multiple databases, which is important. And we've also got the link here for the postgresql.org/downloads. That's where you'll download the necessary software for your machine to handle Postgres, and use pgadmin, which is what we're now going to use. We use pgadmin to start up a server, and that's the server that we can actually, so it's start up a database, and that's the database that we can add objects to using Django. So we'll go ahead and do that straight away. If I go into my machine and go for pgadmin, where's that going to open? Probably in the wrong place as always. There we go, that's open. So if I sign in with my admin password, if I open up servers on the top left here, it will show you the servers that I've already got. Now I've got a version 12 and I've got version 13. I installed version 13 in the video that I've got on my channel already. So we'll use 13. Just make sure that you use the right port, because there's a different port between 12 and 13. I made that mistake myself. So if we click on 13, right click on databases and create. We want one database just called did demo. That's the one we'll use for our main database, but we'll also create another one called diddemo_user. And that's the database that we'll use to handle all things to do with the user. So authentication, a little bit later it might be e-commerce, but also the TOTP device that we use for the one-time passwords for admin. So all of that will be handled in that database. So click save. And that's all you've got to do on pgadmin. So we've now got two databases that we can use in development. Great, we now open up Sublime Text. So this is the settings.py file, and this is the database dictionary that comes straight out of the box from Django. Like I said, what we're going to do is we're going to have multiple databases. So we need to define what these database configurations are in this dictionary. Now, if we go straight into docs on multiple databases, it talks about defining databases. So you must have a default database defined in databases variable. Now that default in this instance can be a blank dictionary. It doesn't have to be populated, and that's how we're going to manage this, because we're going to be using something called routers. So we'll be using this here, this configuration. But instead of it being a MySQL, it will be two Postgresql databases. So that's what we'll go ahead and add now. Okay, so databases. So default, we don't want that anymore. And we will delete the files that we've already got in our project in regards, so it will delete this DB SQLite file. We don't need that anymore after today. We will have to create another super user and go through the process of registering a TOTP device again, but that's not too much of a problem. So first and foremost, what we want to define is a user DB, and that'll be a dictionary, and then after that we want main DB. Now you can call these whatever you like, really, it doesn't matter, but you will be referring to these in when we start defining the database routers. So in this one here we want a few keywords, so it's name, just so I get the syntax right, so name, then we've got engine, we've got user, password, host, and port. And this one will be called, remember we called this did demo underscore user. So did demo underscore user. And then in the engine, we want Django.db.backends.postgresql. This will change when we go into production, but for development this is all we need. User in this instance is Postgres. Password. I'll show you what I'm going to do with password in a second. So in the description below you'll see that we're installing two libraries. One of them is PsychoPG2 and the other one is Django decouple. Now decouple is a library that allows us to remove sensitive information from our settings file and wider project, and actually decouple it from the project and have it housed in another file that you can store elsewhere. So we'll do that before I start putting my password in here. Localhost for host and port for number 13 is 5433. Okay, so I'm not going to type all that out again. What I'm going to do is just copy that down and just change some of the values. So did demo, password, we will look at that in a second. Okay, in fact, let's do some pip installs and do the decoupling now. So what we'll need, so if I open up Django decouple, just do pip, I'll come up with I'll have the link in the description. We can copy that. You can see that my environment is working, so we can just do a pip install Django decouple. Oh, I could have done the other one as well, so pip install psy PG2, I think it is. Yeah, great, they're the two that we need. So now what we need to do is now we need to create a settings.ini file in our project. So if we go in File, New, we'll save as, this can be in the main directory itself, it can just be in here, and we'll call this settings.ini. Save. And what we'll now do is we will move some sensitive information into this, and then we can refer to it in the settings.py file by importing decouple and then using config as a way of selecting the variable that's now in a different decoupled file. So we'll start with the secret key, which is this here. So we'll copy that, and we call this settings, I believe, and it's secret key, and this isn't a string, you just have it in there as it is without being a string. And if you do have any percentage marks in here, you do need to add another one. It's just the syntax of this library. So there we go. If we have database password equals, and I'll blur this out, save. Now we can refer to those variables in settings.py file by, first and foremost, we need to import, and I think it's just import decouple, or from decouple import config. I'll just double check my notes. Yeah, it is. So it's from decouple import config. There we have it. And now instead of secret key here, what we do is we use config and we bring in as a string secret key. And we'll do that for anything that is sensitive in our settings.py file. One of those will be my password. So this will be database password. And we'll have the same password for both. It might be different in production, but that's how we're going to do it in development. And there we have it. So we've now defined two databases in our settings file. Because we no longer have a default database, we now need to craft some routers so that Django understands what database to use for what migrations to make. Also it'll understand things like how objects are related, what apps can read, which apps can write. So we need to configure that. So we'll go about doing that right away now. And how we do that is we open a new file, and I'm going to save that just in my did demo directory here. And this will be called db routers.py. Save, and we can probably pull this straight from docs actually, rather than having to write this all out. So synchronizing your databases, so it talks about how we now make migrations and migrate is slightly different to what we would do before because the command is different. So with a single database you just make migrations and then migrate, but with multiple databases you have to select what database you want to migrate and when. So, and these are the commands to do that. But I'll go through that in a few moments. But this is now talking about database routers and the functions that are within database routers, but then it gives you some examples. So again, example of some databases, no default, this has got an auth database, a primary, a replica 1 and a replica 2, and then it has an example of a router called auth router. And I'm just going to take that and I'm going to move that across to I might regret doing this actually, because no, it doesn't look too bad actually. Auth router. So in a database router, you need to define what apps will be using or will be looked at and managed by that particular router. So the example that comes straight off the docs has auth and contents types. Now we've added some other apps to this project that we need this database to handle, and if you don't add it in the root app labels, you'll have errors such as permission errors and engine errors. We probably could even do an example of what that looks like, but I'll just walk you through this currently. So you've got a few functions, so db for read, for write, relation and migrate. So these four functions, I won't have a deep dive because this is worded very, very well in the docs. But essentially what we're doing here is we're trying to define right functions about how this router handles the apps that have been assigned to it. So the apps in root apps labels can, in this case, read, write. There's an allow relationship here and also allow migrate. So I've probably thundered my way through that explanation, but read the docs. I'm just showing you how to implement what is in the docs into this project, right? So let's go ahead and add some bits and pieces to the root labels, root app labels. So auth, so this is a user auth, so that would definitely be in this router. But what we also need in here are the, if we go back to the settings and go back to our installed apps, we've got admin, we've got sessions. So these are all related to users, right? So we will want to use admin, we want sessions in there. We'll also want Django OTP, so one-time password, and we'll also need the TOTP model as well. And sites. I think we'll have sites in there as well. If we add all of those in there, and then when we make the migrations, we shouldn't have any issues. But if you do start forgetting to add the apps that you've installed into your project, you're going to run into some problems when you're migrating. So just be careful there. And what I'm going to do, is just to save a little bit of time, I'm going to just copy what I've already put across on my other screen. So there we have it. So there are roots, and we want user database. That's what we've called it in our project. User database, and then we want it in the bottom one as well. Right, that is our auth router. We now need another router because we've got two databases, right? So we're looking at all things about a user, authentication and such, and we're getting it into a new database that we've defined in the database variable called user database. But now we want one for main database, and this is going to handle everything in our main app. And in the model so far it's just media, but that could grow. But the app main is going to be housed in a different database to the authentication. So if we go back into routers, and again I'm going to save some time, but essentially it's exactly the same router as what we've just defined for user, apart from I'm removing the allow relation, and I'm calling the database main DB, but in the root app labels it's just main. So in this router, when we're doing migrations, this tells Django what to do with the migrations for the app main. I hope that makes sense. And that's all we need to do on the routers for now. But we do need to also add another variable into our settings.py file called database routers, which is a list that defines these routers. Now it's important that you get these routers in the variable in order. So we go back into settings.py and just add it to just underneath installed apps. It doesn't really matter where it goes. Actually, we just have it underneath databases. There we go. So we've got database routers. Now you can see what I've pulled in here is did demo, which is the directory, db routers, which is the file that we've just created, and then the class is called auth router. And the second one is the same again, except it says main router. So if we save that, we should be good to go. Apart from we've got a database file here, we can delete that now, we don't need that. We've already made the migrations, but just to be safe, let's remove, we probably don't need to be fair, that is the only model that we've got. No, do you know what, we're going to, I'm going to delete them, and the cache files as well, delete folder. Can't be too careful with migrations. Right, so for all intents and purposes, we've just taken our project backwards a step. So we haven't made any migrations, all of the TOTP migrations that we made, and the migrations we made for the main app and the media model, that's gone back to blank canvas again. So if we go back into our command prompt, the virtual environment is already going. So what we now need to do is we need to make migrations. So Python manage.py make migrations. Hope I spelled manage right. So there we go. Right, we had a problem simply because I've put host. If you can see, I've got a typo. So it didn't like that. So there we go. Let's try that again. And as soon as I change that, it seemed to work. There we go. Did that? No, to change it to text. Right, okay. So now, normally with a single database, we would now run Python manage.py migrate. But we're not going to do that now. What we're going to do is we're going to migrate the user database first, and then we'll do the main database. So let's go. And how you do that is migrate -- database, and then equals, and this will be user DB. Okay, that looks like it worked. And now we'll do the same for main DB. That looked to have worked as well. So when I was playing around with this earlier, it took me forever to get it to this point. So we've configured it okay, we've got the two databases, happy days. So now what we need to do, we need to define and create a super user so we can go into the database and do the TOTP pieces again. So let's go. And the way you do that now we've got two databases, we've kind of inherently made this a little bit more complicated, because you can't just create a super user now, and you can't make calls to certain databases. You need to change the way you make the call, because Django won't know what database that you're making a query on. So in this case, it would be Python manage.py create super user database equals user DB. There we go. Bobby@didcoding.com. Okay, apparently we've got a super user in that database now. So if we go and run a server and open up my browser, go incognito, go localhost /Django admin, because we want to use the out of the box built-in admin page rather than our tailored one. And that seems to be working. So Bobby@didcoding.com. Okay, promising. So let's go into TOTP device, add a device. I should now be able to find the user, which is this one I've just created. Call it Bobby and save. I now get my phone, click on QR code. We've been through this already, but this is just the extra security we've added to admin. Now take me through to my my Google Authenticator. And it's now created a new 6-digit code. So I'll log out just to show that this does work. Admin. Six-digit code is 382506. There we have it. It looks identical to what it did. So all we've done in this video is we've upgraded from SQLite database that comes straight out of the box with Django, and we've updated to a Postgresql database. But what we've also done is we've created multiple databases for this project, so that we can. And the reason we're doing that isn't, we're not just trying to make it more complicated for for giggles. We are giving ourselves the opportunity to manage the databases on different servers, and so you can have a data center that is local to you for one part of the project, and you can have another data center somewhere else in the world for the other part of the project. It also allows us to break the project down into modules and have things like subdomains. So what I might do for this project is have a subdomain such as account.diddemo.com, which will be the domain that users are directed to when they log in, when they change their profile, when they update, when they add an image, or when they make a payment, for instance. So this just gives us that extra bit of flexibility later on in a project. So we may as well get it done now. So that's the reason why we've done it. We haven't just done it to make it more complicated. So we've now got two databases, a user database, which does all of the authentication, manages sites, the TOTP stuff, and we've got a main database that manages all of the main models that we're building in that project. And that's it. So that's the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it hasn't been too much gobbledygook. I stumbled my way through it. Django docs is a great resource to look at. If you really need a deep dive on anything that I'm talking about, then go to their docs. At the end of the day, that's where I've learned how to use Django. have a look, walk yourself through the databases, walk yourself through the multiple databases and how to manage database routers, and get it implemented, and then I'll be seeing you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to like. Thank you very much. Bye.